We are the other people. We are the other people. We are the other people. You're the other people too. Find a way to get to you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Other People Show. Call this a pilot, call this a stint, call this bullshit, whatever you want. We don't give a shit, and you probably don't either. So this will be our pilot episode. I am, of course, am your host, Jordan, or J-Dog, or whatever the fuck you want to call me. And I have a co-host, my good friend Andrew. Say hello, Andy.
Hello, people.
Yes. So, call this a random bullshit show, or call it whatever we try to discuss on it. But for today, I thought we would try to do a special discussion. Something of particular interest and something of a bit of a nerve for nerds like ourselves. That is the makers of Squaresoft and Square Enix, the makers of the popular Final Fantasy series, are, in kind of my opinion, kind of a dying series at the same time. But it should be noted they are also have been known to make many other video games, some of which have been hits, some of which have been kind of hit or miss, and really they've had their hands in a lot of different video games, as I've been doing a little bit of research for the last couple of weeks. If you want to consider research, just hopping onto Wikipedia for a few minutes. Either way, it works. So we thought we would do a brief little discussion about a lot of video games made by Squaresoft and Square Enix, many of which that we have played and enjoyed, others that we haven't. This is gonna have to be a brief show because, as you may have noticed, it's very low tech. I'm doing it via a webcam, and since my friend Andy is not able to be here on physical terms because, well, we live several thousand miles away from each other, so we're doing it via cell phone. Quite possibly exactly, probably the lowest form of tech in which to do a quote-unquote podcast, as we're calling it for right now. So let's just go ahead and get started, and we'll try to keep some of these discussions as brief as possible, because and we have lists, so that way we can stay on track, because if we don't, we tend to go off into tangents. So, obviously the first game to talk about, and the first game I probably ever played that was by Squaresoft was, of course, the original Final Fantasy on Nintendo. At least in my mind, the first and the original RPG that I've ever played. How about you, Andy?
I never played it on the original Nintendo. I pretty much played it back when PlayStation was doing the Final Fantasy Anthology series.
Yeah.
But, it was alright.
Yeah.
Certain aspects of it I liked, some I didn't, but
yeah.
I think that goes pretty much hand in hand with Final Fantasy altogether.
Well, yeah. This was, well, at least to me, this was the game, as I've said, that this was the game that pretty much introduced me, in a way, to RPGs. I don't remember really playing it that much, but I did used to watch my brother and sister play it all the time. And even now, when I do play it, I do still like it, but then I remember the various reasons why I was never able to fully like the game, because about as far as I got was to the Elflands, and then that's when you really begin to get your ass kicked, at least for me anyway. Because you spend several hours trying to grind, both trying to get, every one of your characters leveled up and much stronger, and then to be able to afford the best weapons at the time. And even then, it feels like the combat difficulty is broken, in a way. But, that was very early Nintendo, so, oh well. Still a good game in my mind. It's certainly, because it's Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy often has a lot of good music. That was certainly the game that when I first started, I just love hearing that music.
Yeah.
So.
That is true.
Yeah.
But, it's old school Nintendo type stuff. It's supposed to be difficult.
Yeah.
Nintendo back then didn't have a difficulty
Yeah.
setting for things. It's pretty much if you can't beat it, tough shit.
Yeah, basically. Alright, so on to the next game on the list. I'm actually kind of curious as to what we should move on to next. Do you have anything that you'd like to suggest for next, maybe?
Well, we'll move on to Final Fantasy 4.
Alright.
Or 2.
Or 2.
Super Nintendo days.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 4 or 2. I remember I did originally play this game when it first came out on Super Nintendo. Though I didn't get to play it much because the person who rented it was a friend of mine at the time, and he wanted to hog the Super Nintendo all to himself so that he could play it. I did play it a lot more later when it was, later released on for the PlayStation as part of the Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger. I can certainly enjoy it. It is still a balls hard game, but it is still at least enjoyable, certainly.
Yeah. And I personally kind of prefer the anthology version of it on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Because they kind of fixed a lot of problems that
with a lot of the translation.
Quite frankly had.
Yeah.
They changed the dialogue. They actually kept all of the abilities that you were supposed to have.
Yeah.
And to me, this had a much darker story. It was like the first time they had an adult story in the Final Fantasy games, as far as I'm concerned. I'm probably wrong, and I'm sure plenty of people are going to correct me on it, but
yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah. Well, and let's briefly touch on Final Fantasy II, because, I did play it when it was a part of the PlayStation Origins of Final Fantasy. I didn't like it that much, and I'm sure that was also a bit of a take on a more serious story, but, I only briefly played it, so I can't really say that much on it.
Yeah, but the problem with it was the whole system to where in order to increase your HP, you had to actually get your character's ass kicked.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just no fun.
Yeah, that's kind of part of a Final Fantasy thing to where they just throw in these ultra-complicated systems that really confuse the heck out. Actually, that's not just a Final Fantasy thing. That's a Square Enix thing altogether.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they do...
Especially in later games like Deus Ex.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Though I think that was always, kind of the Deus Ex style, because originally, as you know, that wasn't Square Enix. That was Eidos, who originally made the Deus Ex games.
I see. I didn't know that because I didn't play any
Well,
Deus
yeah.
Ex games until this last one.
I know. In fact, me either. So, I only know about the original Deus Ex game because, well, I had certainly heard of it. I'd never played it. And then I actually bought it for PlayStation 2, and then I played it, and yeah, that is a balls hard game to begin with. And the latest one is certainly very hard too, but it's also at least still very enjoyable. Okay, anyway, let's get back on to... See, people? You see what happens?
Hey, we already ran off there on a little mini rant.
Yeah, well, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to another one. What do you say we talk a little bit about Super Mario RPG?
Okay.
Super Mario RPG, I don't really remember if I did play this back in the day. I mean, I remember holding the physical copy in my hand, and I certainly remember taking it home and playing it for a little bit, mostly because it was Mario, and not really realizing that, oh, it's an RPG, a role-playing game, and god damn it, I thought I turned off my phone. Oh well, son of a bitch, and I unplugged the damn thing too. Alright, anyway, where was I? Super Mario RPG. I I did play this game briefly back in the day. I wasn't able to get into it at the time because for me, you know, despite the fact I had originally played, games like Final Fantasy, I wasn't really that into RPGs at the time, and still wasn't. So it was hard for me to get into this, and really hard for me to enjoy it. At least until many years later, when I rebought it on Virtual Console on the Nintendo Wii, and I've played a good amount of it, and I can certainly say this is a good game.
Yeah. I do remember playing it back on the Super Nintendo when it came out the first time.
Yeah.
I remember getting semi-far in it, but I just couldn't get the timing down for the combo moves that you had to perform, like the jumping moves, the hammer throws and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was part of it. And there was like one part to where there was a platform to where you had to time your jumps exactly, and I never could get it right.
Yeah.
I never actually beat it, but I do remember getting fairly far in it. I certainly enjoyed it. I especially did like the story in it.
Yeah. I had actually.
Not all I remember of it.
Yeah. I had actually forgotten about the fact that there are platforming in this game. But yeah, there was platforming. There was.
Kind of a hodgepodge of stuff in there.
Yeah, actually.
But it all worked. I just couldn't personally get the timing right.
Yeah. I'm sure if I played it now, I think I remember there were some parts about the platforming that were a bit too much of a pain in the ass. But all in all, I would still certainly recommend it as a game to check out.
Two is this. You gotta remember it's back like in the old things where there wasn't difficulty settings and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, and really,
just go at it and you can't beat it. Oh shit.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that was kind of pretty typical of a lot of games back then. Well, there were some games that did have a difficulty setting. Some.
Yeah, but that was mostly fighters. But that's like another discussion we'll have probably later.
Yeah. Alright, so there you go. Super Mario RPG. Next, how about a little bit of Actraiser?
Okay.
Actraiser, I never played back in the day. I didn't play it until, of course, the Wii Virtual Console. And I never fully knew what it was. I never knew about the fact that it's a God Sim mixed with some side-scrolling action. And I think the game overall, I think it's good. The God Sim stuff is, it's something new and it's something interesting. It can get a bit repetitive at times, but at least from stage to stage, from level to level, and scene to scene, they do introduce a few new things for you to do and to use all your different god powers. The side-scrolling is fine. I'm not sure if it's from the Wii controller, but it felt like sometimes there was either a bit of a lag or something like that for every time that I would jump from platform to platform. And then sometimes the hit detection felt like it was a bit off. But other than that, I would certainly call Actraiser another good game. And to briefly touch on Actraiser 2, which I only played for a little bit, that game is certainly good, but I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, do miss the fact that they decided to remove the God Sim from it altogether. Which...
I didn't play the second game, but I did play the first one on the original Nintendo, and I certainly remember some hit detection errors. So it may not just be your reroll out.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy that. I especially like the God Sim part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, the God
Who doesn't
Sim...
like being a god tormenting people?
Yes, yeah. I rather liked it because it was a nice, different mix-up between levels. You know,
Yeah, it did get a little repetitive, but it never got to the point to where it's just like, oh, God, why am I doing this?
yeah,
Action thing.
yeah, it never came to a point of overwhelming boredom or frustration.
Yeah.
So certainly, yeah. A few things I might add for Actraiser 2. They did introduce a few new things for a lot of the side-scrolling sections, in that you now have a shield, so you can block projectiles. You can also attack in many different directions. You have a double jump, and you can also float upon your descent, which was nice, and was interesting. The game is just as equally hard as the first one, but I just don't get why they decided to remove the God Sim, and yet they leave the level selection much like you had in the original Actraiser. So,
Who knows?
Oh well.
Developers do silly things.
Sometimes they do. And let's move on to a game that you and I could, well, just piss ourselves with excitement and just constantly talking about. Chrono Trigger.
Ah, yes. We could basically devote an entire show just to Chrono Trigger.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm not going to do that here, but we could.
Pretty much. I devoted an entire video to just talking about Chrono Trigger. So, but, okay, so in my mind, and at least in my opinion, Chrono Trigger is the game that made me fall in love with RPGs.
It certainly got me, for the first time, interested in them. I actually didn't go back and play any of the other Final Fantasy games until I played Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. I'm trying, and the funny thing is that I'm still trying to remember exactly how I officially got introduced to Chrono Trigger, and pretty much I think it was from you, from either hearing you talking about it, or...
I came over one time and I was like playing it, and you just kind of started watching me play it.
Yeah. And I remember, I think I rented it one weekend while I was staying over at my grandmother's, and I just happened to have my Super Nintendo and my television, and I started playing it, and I really got into it.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. There's really not too much, the only two different things I can say about it come from the original Super Nintendo version, and then, actually three things that you can say about it, was from the original Super Nintendo onto the PlayStation version, and then the DS version. So, I played the Super Nintendo version a lot. I never really officially beat it. I mean, the only way I originally beat the original Chrono Trigger was via Game Genie. And I'm still trying to remember exactly who gave me that cheat code. But then, of course, there was the PlayStation version, which got me excited, because then that meant, oh, cool, I can own Chrono Trigger again, because for some dumb reason I got rid of my Super Nintendo version. Why? I don't know.
Which was stupid of us, but...
Yeah. Well, and isn't it funny, really, how back then, when you got a brand new video game, you tore open the box, you threw out the box, you kept maybe, the booklet and the poster that came with it, but you didn't give a shit about the box. Now, more than anything, when, as we try to get back a lot of those old games that we grew up with, we want the box. Especially. It's just very silly, but, it is kind of funny to look back on and be like, man, really wish I kept that box. But anyway, Chrono Trigger on PlayStation, which I did enjoy having, there were just two really bad hang-ups for me. One, of course, was a lot of the animated sequences that I didn't like, that I remember, I think when I first heard about them, did kind of get me excited for it.
They weren't very good animation.
Yeah,
and quite frankly, was something that wasn't necessary, because they didn't change any of the things that went on in the actual game, and they just threw in these enemy themes for no fucking reason.
Pretty much. And then, of course, there was the load times between the beginning of a battle and the end of every battle.
Or whenever you decide to go into your inventory screen.
Yeah, oh god, yeah, that too. And it's funny, because it still makes me wonder to this day, like, how did such a bad transferring like that happen?
The way it was explained to me is that it's a thing from a cartridge-based game onto a CD, and it just didn't translate very well.
I guess.
But still, you would have thought they would have done something to fix that.
Yeah, and I don't know.
But on the plus side, the DS version of it was much better.
Oh, yeah.
You could take off the anime cutscenes if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm. And
which we do.
Yeah.
And they fixed a lot of the dialogue things, which you didn't realize were bad until you actually heard the original translation.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, because for the longest time, I never really knew there was anything wrong with the translation. I mean, the only scene I ever found silly was the future scene between Marley and the Elder.
Turned out to be your descendant. You actually beat the game.
Yeah, where, like, after you enter the food storage area, and you bring back that seed, and you give a bit of a rousing speech about how, you all have to survive for us, and the Elder just looks at you and goes, you kids are so weird, and in the original, Marley says, maybe that's because we're healthy. And even back then I remember going, what the hell was up with that line? It was so stupid, and then
the DS version, and it's actually much fun, because we haven't given up hope.
Yeah.
It makes much more sense.
Not only does it make so much more sense, but at the same time, it also has a bit of a emotional weight to it too. And maybe go, oh, I like that better. And
this is kind of a minor thing, but I kind of first noticed it when you're actually wandering around the fairground in the beginning of it, and they're talking about the war with Megas.
Mm.
In the original thing, they actually mention Megas by name. But the other one, they just call him the Dark Wizard, or the Fiend Lord, rather.
Yeah.
And that makes much more sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought I'd throw that out there anyway.
No, yeah, that's okay. So, there you go, us talking for several minutes on Chrono Trigger. Alright, let's touch briefly on a few others. I say briefly because a few of these I've only played a little bit of. Bushido Blade, which I know that you played a lot of. I actually own both Bushido Blade 1 and 2 on PlayStation. I remember I played a little bit of it some odd years ago, and was a bit thrown off by the fact that, you just have to hit your opponent once and you win, and if they do the same, they win? Like, that's odd. But now...
Yeah, well, that one that was first released, that was one of the selling points is that you could actually kill your opponent in one hit if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they could do the same to you. It's like supposed to be the most realistic combat game out there, and in a way, it kind of is.
Yeah. Which I will admit I do find very interesting. I would like to actually try playing that, with another person as opposed to, constantly just playing against a computer. But yeah.
It does make it more interesting.
Yeah. So there's that. Let's talk briefly also a little bit about, Final Fantasy Tactics, which I did play a lot of. I know that. And I'm sure you did too.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Tactics is certainly a very good idea, and certainly starts off well enough, but then you run into a lot of problems.
Yeah, there is that whole difficulty curve, especially if you actually try to level up your characters and actually max out the job things. The
Yeah.
monsters level up with you, and they actually wind up
being stronger than
really
you are.
overpowered
Yeah.
to the point where it becomes very difficult to actually beat them.
Yeah. God, I mean, that was something I just utterly hated about Final Fantasy Tactics, was that if you wanted to grind and
And you have to, like most RPGs.
yeah, because well, if you don't grind and you just proceed on to the story, as you are when you first start, you'll get your ass kicked. And if you want your other characters to learn, other class systems or raise levels or anything like that, you have to grind. But even then, if you do that, you're going to lose a lot of new classes. And that's really all there was to it. And I remember if you had any spellcasters, i.e. wizards, in your group, using them to try to cast at least any variant of a powerful spell was a complete waste of time, because you'd have to wait a couple of turns for the spell to actually activate, and even by then,
it would take forever, and you can even move your character while he's trying to cast it. And if the enemy happens to move out of the way from the spell when you're casting it, you just wasted a fucking spell.
Yeah, so it just raises the question of why even have a spellcaster in your group? Because low-level spells, against a high-level enemy aren't going to do that much damage anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just a waste.
The summoner was the rare exception. But yeah, it took some time.
Mm-hmm.
But once you got, like, the ability quick cast,
Mm-hmm.
it like, virtually cut it down in half, and you could actually get it out in a decent amount of time. But
Yeah.
that was, like, the rare exception.
Yeah.
For the spellcasters, and,
Yeah. Alright, so let's move on to Parasite Eve. Parasite Eve, again, I didn't play until many years later on the PlayStation Network. I remember I had originally played Parasite Eve 2, and I really didn't like it that much.
I didn't either. I thought it was an interesting idea that they tried to make it kind of more like Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
But once you, like, get to your first boss fight, then it's just kind of, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But it became too difficult because you, like, had to retreat from him at the same time. And then if he catches you, he pretty much kills you. But you get, like, to a dead end to where he's gonna catch you.
Yeah. So, Parasite Eve, playing it, is certainly a very good game. I actually like the idea of being able to run around, in your battlefield and actually, be able to dodge your opponent's attacks, or their projectiles or whatever it is that they're throwing at you, and then, you attacking however many times that you want to or can. It is a game I actually haven't played in a while, but I've played a good amount. And
it certainly had an interesting story to it, to where
yeah,
apparently this virus, I guess, what you would call it, I can't exactly remember what it was, but for some reason it started transforming this one opera singer, I guess.
Yeah.
And things, she was like creating monsters, and somehow your character was immune to it.
Yeah. I never really got that far in the story, but that was as far as from what I understood about it, certainly.
Yeah. I didn't either, but I certainly liked it. Wish
Yeah.
I could have gotten a bit farther in it.
Yeah. Alright, well,
But I only rented it, and it's kind of hard to get very far in RPG when you only have 5 days to
yeah,
do anything.
yeah. Yeah. Alright, so sadly we're kind of running low on time, but we can see about trying to talk about one or two more of these. So I'm going to move on down the list, and let's try to talk about a little bit about Kingdom Hearts. Did you play the original at all?
Yeah, I still have the original somewhere, but I got right about to the point to where you're supposed to go into Winnie the Pooh's world and just lost interest.
Mm.
Not from... Well, I guess lost interest is not quite the accurate word I'm looking for. It's more like I got interested in something else and just never went back.
Yeah. Yeah. I played nearly until the end. I got to the final boss fight, and that was about where I lost interest. I was really enjoying the game, but yeah, that whole entire boss fight really pissed me off. Mostly because I remember through all three, and of course this is a pretty typical RPG trope, certainly from Squaresoft or Square Enix, where your final boss always has several different forms, where during the fight they take away your ally companions away, and you're just fighting him by yourself. You know, and so it makes it rather kind of difficult for you to try to be strategic when you're by yourself. But, oh well. So...
I certainly liked it, especially the whole mixture of Final Fantasy and Disney characters.
Yeah.
The whole Hades Hercules episode in there was kind of weird to me, but...
Yeah. Yeah.
But, anyway, let's move on to something else.
Alright, I kind of hate to move on to this one, but we might as well, since it looks like we might have to do a part 2. Deus Ex, The Human Revolution.
Okay.
Now, of course, this was obviously not a game that was wholly made by Square Enix, but they did certainly have a lot to do with it. Certainly, in that their name, does appear in big, bold lettering, on both the game and on the screen for it. So
It certainly got their design stamp in it, with like the whole futuristic world, steampunk futuristic type world thing to it. I guess it wouldn't be steampunk, but
yeah, it was more cyberpunk than
cyberpunk
steampunk.
is what I was actually looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell in the cutscenes. It's just kind of too bad. Like the actual in-game scenes kind of don't live up to the cutscenes. That's typical of Square Enix anyway.
Yeah. Well, and from what I understand about it, I understand that they did a lot of the. I understand they did a lot of the cinematics, which is quite evident.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because if there's one thing that Square Enix really knows how to do, they know how to do incredible cinematics. That is very true of them. But overall, so Deus Ex, The Human Revolution, is pretty much the first game in the series that I ever played. And
Thank you.
yeah, and is certainly a very, very hard game, but I still found it to be very, very enjoyable. I loved the hell out of this game. I really loved it.
I certainly enjoyed it. I certainly like the more technical form of combat that they got in there. It's just too bad with your implants or upgrades that you have option to that you have way too many, and quite frankly, if you don't know what the heck you're doing or what you need, you can get really screwed really quickly.
Yeah, that is true. I remember actually the first time I played, I didn't. I needed either a higher hacking or to upgrade my arms, and I didn't. And so that kind of stopped me from being able to do whatever it is I was supposed to do. I'm sure there might have been another way around at the time, but it didn't come to my mind.
Yeah, but
so
they certainly don't show you those options.
yeah, that is true.
If they actually showed you the options that you could do to actually do the other things, that would certainly help a whole lot.
Yeah. And so actually that was actually I think I actually had to restart my game, in fact. Not that I really minded, though, because I was still enjoying it.
I did too.
Yeah.
I actually had to restart it several times because I kept like, oh, shit, I really should have done that. No,
Yeah.
I might as well just restart it.
Yeah, so there you go. There's a quote-unquote pro tip. If you're going to play Deus Ex: The Human Revolution for the first time,
You have to restart your game several times.
well, not exactly, but certainly you might want to focus on putting a lot of your upgrade points into, certainly a lot into your hacking ability at first. So.
Yeah. Hacking in your arm.
Yeah, certainly. Well, sadly, looks like we'll have to do a part 2 because we're going a bit over time here. But, hopefully, I hope that you guys enjoyed our ramblings, and we will certainly be back, hopefully, in a couple of weeks, and we'll continue and hopefully finish off our discussion on a retrospective and maybe a little bit of bitching on the company that is Squaresoft / Square Enix. Take care, guys. See you next time. Bye, Andy.
Good night.